This week they're releasing Star Wars, and The Force Awakens or something's coming out. So there's my little Darth Vader guy. And as he can tell you, with stain, you can always go darker. Coffee and Tools, episode 26, The Stain, take 1. The other movie that was out earlier this year was the Minion movie, and I was pretty impressed as far as, I mean, it was funny, you know. There's no question, when a Minion laughs, you have to laugh with that. You just have to. Okay, stain. Let's get on stain. A couple things you're going to need. This one's used, but it's a brush that has been used for stain before, so we can still use it. It still has the capacity to carry the stain over to the lumber. Biggest number one factor with putting stain on is a lot of people brush it on like they're painting, and you sort of don't use stain like you're painting. Stain is like a little bit of a different formula. So we'll stain this piece of pine. What I'm going to start with is, I just wanted to show this piece of lumber. There's the original lumber. And see, there's a beautiful stain on there, and that's a good piece. So people see this sort of thing and say, oh well, I've got pine here like that. I've got lumber. I want to stain it like that and make it look beautiful like that. What we all seem to fail to realize sometimes is this is pine. This is not pine. This is a hardwood. And when it was stained with a very light stain, such as like this right here, this is what the fella came up with his stain choices, and so he reached that. If I use the exact same stain that he used to do this piece right here, and I put it on this pine, I'm not going to get what he had, because the base or the wood that he chose at the time is different. And that's where a lot of times, if you go to the local stores, like the home improvement stores, you're going to take a look at their samples. Now take a good look at those samples before you pick your stain, because what's happening is a lot of times the samples will be shown with what the stain looks like on certain different types of lumbers. And you want to really pay attention to that, because you might be dealing with cedar or oak, or in this case pine. A lot of times you're going to be dealing with pine, cedar, or what's the other one? Poplar, the lumber. And that stain that you pick out may not give you the kind of results you're looking for. And I'll tell you, I've had a lot of letdowns with stain. One of the biggest ones was trying to put mahogany on cedar, and it just would not work. It came out purple, kind of a purple hue to it. So it was a real disaster. So what I'm going to show you today is a piece of pine. And one of the ones that I do like with pine, if you want to go to a darker finish that gives it more like a furniture kind, dark antique kind of furniture look, is I like to use like this one here. This is a red mahogany, but a lot of times what I'll do is I'll come back with this. Now this is a stain that is virtually it's espresso, so it's way darker. It's almost black. It's so dark compared to this. But what I do is I put this on very heavily first, let it dry, come back, and maybe put 1 or 2 coatings, and then I can darken it with this one. Like I said, with stain, you can work your stain darker and darker. You just sort of can't work it lighter and lighter. So let's do something here. First problem is with stain is the pigment likes to settle in the bottom of the can. It's not all gooey like paint, but it's in the bottom of the can. The other thing is, do not paint stain. Like, don't just paint the whole piece of lumber and walk away and think, yeah, I stained today. That's not how to do a proper job of staining. When you put stain on, you want to put your stain on your lumber, get it started, and get a rag and start moving that stain around and push it around and get it to like this, where you wipe it and it gets all nice and evenly stained, and that's going to give you your better results. So you need a brush, but you also need a rag. Always need a rag. If somebody tells you you can just brush stain on, then no, that's not the case. I like the foam brushes. I have used them, and they do work. I think they work better actually than a hairbrush. I just used this one the other day for staining a piece of lumber, and I had seen on the internet where different people had tried to tackle stain, and really you can shake a stain can up. Now I have right here, I have some polyurethane. Now that's be a nice coating afterwards. I do not, and you do not shake this can. You don't want air bubbles in your polyurethane. You want to, that's the whole trick with polyurethane, is try to keep the air bubbles down to a minimum so you don't shake this one up. But this one here, this is a cherry stain, for example. You can go to town with shaking these cans up because the pigment, like I said, settles, but it doesn't get all gooey. It just gets kind of watery on the top with the pigment in the bottom. So what you're looking for is, remember that tool I told you about a while back, earlier this year, was I mentioned popsicle sticks, and this is one of the places I find they're great, especially these little cans. You can kind of sit there and stir them up, and believe me, stir them up. Don't think, oh, it looks good to me. No. And another cool thing, popsicle stick is wood. So when you stir the stain up and pull it, you are going to sort of see a sample of the type of work or the color finish or whatever that you might be looking for. Now, to put stain on, as I said, I'm going to start with this. This is too light for most jobs that I would do. On pine, I wouldn't even, I tell you the truth, I wouldn't even use this on pine. First thing to do is get some stain laid out. And in this case, we're just going to do the whole board. So you can even make circles, you can make whatever you like, but just sort of wet the whole board down. And I'm not even going to finish the board. I'm going to take the rag and I'm going to wipe it. See, I'm going to wipe this up. And I'm actually pulling the stain with the rag now, and I'm just pulling it over the whole board. But you want to wipe the work down after you've brushed it on anyways to get a good even stain. I'm a little light on this end, so I'll just dab it with the brush a little bit, come back and wipe a little more to get it. A small can like this will do an incredible amount of work as far as it'll spread a lot on different lumber. So there's a lot of work you can get done. This is just cherry on top of pine. So you know what we're looking at? We're looking at cherry on top of pine. That's about it. So that was cherry, and that's fairly light. And you know, that might be the effect you want for your pine, or maybe not. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to switch out, and we're going to go to a dark stain. Just a second here. I'll mix it up a little bit. And so what I'm going to do here is, this is red mahogany. I like red mahogany for pine, but it's like there are several different dark stains that I like using on pine. And the problem with pine, I'll even stir this up with the brush. And the same thing, like I said, the pigment is in there, you can sort of pick it up. But the thing is, it's not all gooey. Now, look how dark that is. That looks like a disaster about to happen. Okay, this is like I'm painting stain on top of lumber or something. Well, that's not what you do. When you use stain, you're going to have a rag, and you're going to push that stain around. And I'll even make circles with it. If the wood is like a little bit uneven or something, I'm going to, keep wiping and wiping until I get a consistency. If I want it a little lighter, I can keep rubbing it out with a rag. And like I said, at some point you're going to have to throw the rag away because that's about where you're going to end up with. Should probably have gloves on. So much for that. But and there's a red mahogany stain on a pine board, and it's just a common piece of pine board. But now it looks pretty. It has a pretty look to it. Now the other trick with stain is you're going to have to let this sit up for a very long time, and we're talking might be more than 24 hours, depending on the weather, the humidity, how dry it is, that sort of thing, how much heat you got around. Stain can take a very long time, and very surprising how long it takes for stain sometimes to set up properly. If you come back too soon and try to put like polyurethane on, you might get this weird chemical reaction bubbling up, that sort of thing. But there's a good example of a dark stain. So let's go with the darker. Now I'm going to go to a darker stain, and I'm going to show you what's happening. Now, under my lighting here, this is starting to look a little, I'm going to say a little on the purple side, and that's what I don't like and I don't want, but I'm going to get that with, you're going to get a sort of a purple hue with any stain on pine. Pine is a specific type of a very white lumber, and you're trying to make it very, very dark. So what I do, my trick here, and you can mix stain, you know, but if you do that, if you ever have to come back and reuse it to make the same color or something, you're going to have a problem. Now this particular stain is, as you can tell by that, it's a very dark, it's almost black looking. But what I'm going to do is put some of that on, and I'm going to brush it out all over my lumber. And this is going to bring me a little bit closer to what I want in a very dark. If I'm going for the old, you know, antique furniture look kind of thing, this is the kind of, you know, stain I'm going to use. And I'm going to lightly rag it down again. And now, I don't know if you can tell, but you can see that piece has gotten really dark. And now it's starting to really look rich. And, you know, someone who's really good at looking at lumber would probably start to have a problem and say, you know, I don't think that's pine. I don't know what he's got there. That's a nice looking piece of board. But all I did was put a little bit of this and use, well, you just saw me, I used 3 different stains, but ideally what I wanted to show you was you can go darker and darker, and it's really easy to go darker and darker. To go lighter, you can't. Oh yeah, okay, you can throw the lumber away, go cut some more boards, and start over again. I guess you could do that. Yeah. That would be a mess. But the basics of applying stain to lumber, hopefully this might have helped you. If you've never done it before, this is this sort of thing you need to watch and see how it's put on, and make sure. Rag, bunch of rags, just junk type rags. Particular fabric type, this is a terry cloth, and I really like using a terry cloth, but let's face it, when you get rags, you get a bag of rags, whatever they are. But I like using a terry cloth or something that I can, you know, really rub the stain out with. And the brush really is more like a delivery system. You're just dipping the brush, you're going to get your stain started, but once you've got the stain on there, you want to sort of really rub it out kind of thing. And that's really how you're going to get the effect. Now this is just a piece of scrap board. It actually has a couple of bad cuts right here. You can see the stain actually enhanced the look of that. Okay. Let's look at this other trick. And so here's the stain here that the guy put on, and here's the mess I've just rubbed out. So if I even keep my rag, you can see what I've done right there is I have not duplicated what he has. I actually have a different tone and a different finish from what this is. This was probably, I'm going to bet pecan by the looks of the stain. But as I said, what happens here and what happens there is not even going to be the same color look to it, because this is hardwood and that's pine. And whenever you're staining, it would be really nice if you knew what kind of lumber you're dealing with before you stain it. That's kind of like all the tips I can give you this week about stain. It's just I ran into this week, just a topic. I noticed a lot of people have been told over and over again that they have never done stain before. You don't paint it on, and that's true. You do not paint stain. You actually sort of rub it into the wood to get the finish that you're looking for. And hey, from Coffee and Tools this week, that was it. Have a good one, guys.